This is a special report from CBS News. Now to breaking news from London. Buckingham Palace has just confirmed that Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, has died at the age of 99. He was recently, as you know, released from the hospital after a heart operation. Mark Phillips has this story.
His role in life was to walk one step behind the Queen. But even back there, Prince Philip was able to carve out his own reputation and role in history. Elizabeth was the shop window of what Philip famously called the royal firm, but he reputedly ran the business's back rooms.
So, essentially, the Queen has always worn the crown.
Giles Brandreth ran one of Philip's charities for years.
And Prince Philip was allowed to wear the trousers. That's the way it worked.
Philip had been born into the Greek royal family in 1921 and was educated and had a naval career in Britain. And by luck, or many think by royal design, he was chosen to escort the young Princess Elizabeth on a tour. The Queen's cousin, Margaret Rhodes, recalled the impression he made in a conversation before she died several years ago.
And of course, Prince Philip was the most utterly good-looking Viking god.
Viking god?
Well, he really was so good-looking.
A dream royal romance became a spectacularly successful royal marriage. She provided the continuity and the smiles. Philip provided the support and, from time to time, the controversy. Some thought he was a gaffe-prone fountain of political incorrectness. He once asked Aboriginals in Australia whether they still threw spears at each other. He told British students in China they would get slitty eyes if they stayed there too long. Closer to home, he once asked Scottish driving instructors how they kept their students off the sauce long enough to pass the test.
He just said what he felt. He was very funny. Prince Philip was the man who said, if ever you see a man opening the car door for his wife, it's either a new car or a new wife. He was a shrewd observer.
And a shrewd operator, credited with diffusing the great royal crisis around Princess Diana's funeral. It was Philip who convinced Princes William and Harry to walk behind their mother's coffin when they didn't want to. "I'll walk with you," he said. Harry has since said it was a traumatic experience no child should have to endure, but it was a lesson in royal duty. Royals don't gush, except sometimes. We don't know what Philip thought of the Queen's tribute to him on their golden wedding anniversary, but it could serve as his epitaph.
He has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years, and I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
The royal family made the announcement in a tweet this morning. It is with deep sorrow that Her Majesty the Queen has announced the death of her beloved husband, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. We're joined now by Charlie Daggett in London. Charlie, it was quite a life.
It was quite a life. You know, he was known to be such a character here in the UK. As the Queen had put it multiple times, she always described him as her rock, sort of the quiet strength behind the throne, known for his personality, his sense of humor, his sometimes inappropriate comments, and his sense of humor, and that was part of parcel of who he was. But he was also known to have tried to be the peacemaker within the royal family, trying to keep the royal family together through the rocky patches, including recent rocky patches. You know, in a way, the Queen is obviously the matriarch of this family, but he served as the patriarch of the family when it comes to the royal family itself. But we were always on guard for, you know, Philip's gaffes, Prince Philip's gaffes, what he may have had to say, and he was very quick-witted, and as I said, at times inappropriate, as Mark pointed out in that obituary. He just left the hospital on March 16th. He had been in the hospital for a month. He underwent heart surgery. So, you know, there were hopes, of course, that he was going to reach his 100th birthday, which is June 10th. There were big celebrations planned for that. But, yes, we got news just moments ago from the palace.
I know, Charlie, it's so sorry. I'm so sad to hear this news. I know, as you pointed out, he was at the hospital, and when he was released, people were feeling really good. They were thinking he's getting better. Listen, I know when you're 99, it's always, you never know how much longer you have, but people were feeling pretty good when he left the hospital. Have you heard anything about exactly what happened? Was it just natural causes? And I realize it's still early in this story. It's just breaking there.
Yeah, Gail, you know, I think we all had a sense of relief when a person as old as he is goes to the hospital, 99 years old, and then spends about a month in the hospital and undergoes a heart procedure. You know, you're not thinking it's going to turn out great. So we were all surprised, pleasantly surprised, when he left. As you saw in his own steam, he was in the back of a car sitting up. You know, it wasn't an ambulance that brought him away. In terms of, you know, whether they knew he was nearing the end and he'd be more comfortable, you know, passing away at home, we don't know. We don't know exactly what he succumbed to or when. We just get that statement from the palace just moments ago, so we don't know the details yet. But yes, as we know it, passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle.
Yeah.
Hey, Charlie, you know, it says in the announcement that the royal family put out that the website is temporarily unavailable as they make changes. And in addition, they note, and I guess more information will be forthcoming, that they will join people around the world in mourning this loss. I'm curious, is there a playbook or official process that will unfold in the days ahead? Has something been triggered that we can point to?
Well, it's a good question, Tony. There is, and there certainly was, but in these days of COVID, everything has had to been changed, and everything has been sort of marginalized. So in terms of what we can expect over the next 2 days, I don't know yet. The palace hasn't given us a play-by-play. It would have been a state ceremony, obviously, for Prince Philip. I don't know exactly the timings for that or the level of involvement. But yes, he will be certainly mourned here, and people will want to show their mourning. So there'll have to be something to mark his passing and his funeral, but exactly what, I haven't got the details of.
Charlie, we talk about what a colorful character he was. I recall back in the mid-1980s when I was based in London, going to a coaching contest. He loved to ride, the prince loved to ride horse and carriages in competition. And he was on the course that day in competition, and you could hear him cursing all the way around the course very loudly. And it was you don't forget something like that.
That's part of the charm. That's part of the charm.
You just didn't quite know what he was going to say.
No, he was never shy. He was a character. And as you saw from those earlier pictures, you know, when he was younger, he was quite the playboy. I mean, he was really the heartthrob in the early days. My wife and her mother, more appropriately, would talk about how handsome he was and how charming he was. And yes, part of the charm was, you know, in these days of correct political correctness, I have to add there, he was politically incorrect, and we were always waiting for what he had to say. And he, you know, I mean, he was pretty vulgar and cutting with some journalists, the ones he didn't like. He made known, because, you know, microphones were everywhere. So, you know, he was known to be a man who painted outside the lines. Nobody could really tell him what to do except Her Majesty, and she wasn't about to do that. So really, he was a law unto himself, and beloved for that. Here in the UK. Of course, when he made these inappropriate statements that you saw in Mark's obituary there, it is offensive and it's unacceptable. But it is who he was, and he didn't change for anybody.
And let's talk about their long marriage, Charlie. They'd been together for well over 70 years. That in itself is extraordinary.
It's legendary.
Yes,
and I think, you know, not just 70 years, but really 70 years on the throne. You know, he has been there with the Queen with this unprecedented amount of time right beside her. So he has had a duty, a sense of responsibility, not just being married for that long, but being married to the Queen and having that official role and that duty, being under the spotlight, having to go through the situation with Princess Diana dying, having to be the peacemaker. Even recently, you know, with Prince Harry and Prince William, Prince Charles, and everything that's gone on with the royal family, he has been involved. I know that for a fact. As of about a year ago, when they were talking about Megxit, as it were, we know that he was part of those conversations. So he's a very, very dynamic individual. role, and one who remained dynamic right up till the end.
And he had to play a very unusual role, Charlie. I mean, he's not the monarch, he's the spouse of the monarch. But in many ways, he's the head of the family. So he has this very fine line he has to walk sometimes.
Well, exactly right. I mean, he still had a boss. Maybe we all do. His boss was Her Majesty the Queen, but he had a role as a father, and he had a role in bringing up Prince Charles. You know, he was bringing up a future king, and his grandson, also a future king. And his role was valued, and he was respected within the royal family because of that. He always stood beside the Queen, always knew his place in a manner of speaking, that he was there to support her.
Charlie, thank you.